Hey everybody, welcome to the Rev It Up podcast. Just super excited today to have an incredible guest. We have Kim Orlesky, and she is owner of the KO Advantage Group. She's LinkedIn's top sales leader, 3 times author. Her current book is called Sell More Faster, and I would say that we all want to sell more faster. So with that, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Jess. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's kind of get into it. Before we get too far, where can people find you online, and what's the best way to reach out, and where do they get your book?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is kind of the biggest place to find me on any type of social media. My website is kimorlesky.com, and my book is available wherever your books can be found. So whether that is, if you're an Amazon person, go find it on Amazon. But please, if you can, support small business. Go to your local book retailer, ask them to order it in, and you can find a copy. I'm also, if you have your show notes, I actually will give people the link to the actual whole version, e-copy version. You can go to bit.ly/sellmorefasterbook if you prefer to save a tree and just read the e-version.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely put that in the show notes. So thank you for that. That's fantastic. And so Kim, kind of just briefly, how did you get your start in the sales? Obviously, you've made it big, but kind of where did you start from, and maybe one or two little kind of maybe struggles you had to overcome to get there?
Oh man, I mean, that's a fully loaded question there,
Yes.
Jess.
Yes.
So I mean, when I graduated university, I had a degree in finance. I thought I was going to sit in front of spreadsheets all day, and through chance and circumstance, right? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. I ended up falling into sales as a career, thinking that was just going to be a short-term move, and I was going to get a skill set, and then I was going to continue on. But it turns out that I ended up falling in love with sales, and I worked for several different companies, Xerox, American Express. I worked for, a logistics company, a medical device company. And then after about like 10 years almost in work, when you do really well in corporate sales, you can do really well. I went and traveled the world. And I took 6 months off on backpacking, and as I traveled 17 different countries, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm like, that is the life I truly want to live. And I came back. I decided to start my own sales training company through lots of iterations at the end of the day. And today we're going to be celebrating our 3rd year anniversary at the end of November, which is super exciting. We're a very fast growing team, and really what we want to do is we want to help empower entrepreneurs and small business owners, specifically those that are selling high value services in a business to business conversation. How do you get that premium dollar for that premium service that you're ultimately selling? Because I truly believe that one of the biggest false statements that I've ever had is, I will charge more when I have more clients. And it's actually not the case at all. I've seen people that will be in their very first sale after they've taken our training and be able to close what they thought was the biggest deal that they could have ever done. And in some cases, I mean, this is, 2 times, 3 times their monthly salary when they were working for a corporate company.
How do you suggest that people get that mental gap filled, where it's like they feel like, and I know I've felt this way many times, is just that, how do you justify, making that big jump when you've only charged a certain amount before? It's kind of a mental shift in people's minds, and I think it's sometimes a challenge for people.
Yeah, well, yes, it is, right? But I mean, was it Bob Proctor who said, something along the lines of, why am I worth more than you? And it's only because I said that I am. Like that was pretty much it. And so, at some point, if there's not, I mean, how do you get past the mental shift? It's like, how do you go halfway on a diving board? Right? Like you're either on the diving board or you're in the pool, right? Like there is no halfway point. And at some point you have to decide that today's the day I'm going to jump off the diving board. Today's the day that I'm going to start charging more. And when it comes down to it, I mean, the first thing is that you have to be like, just decide, right? And when it comes to things like pricing, I think a lot of people are surprised that, you know, most companies will choose their pricing like, you know, I pulled it out of thin air, and they're like, but there's all this, like, you know, math, and it's like, no, I selectively chose that that's my pricing, and I created enough value that people said that yes, that's worth it.
Mm,
um, the other thing about pricing and how is that worth it is that the more you slow down your sales process and get to know the client, and the client gets to know you, and you're able to create, how will this investment help you to deliver more, right? How will a dollar with me help you to generate $4 or $10 in your own company? That becomes a way easier conversation and a mental shift for a lot of people.
mm,
Because when I'm not just trying to save you time and money, you know, there I'm looking at it from a, this is where Jess is at a current point in time, this is how much I can save him, so that's where my value is. But rather from an abundance mindset, where when Jess invests with me, this investment is going to get him, you know, 4 times, 10 times, 100 times more in revenue, profitability, clients, whatever it is. That becomes a way easier justification.
mm. Yeah, I heard somebody say recently something about, you know, if I can give you if I give you $100, would you give me $10 back, kind of thing. You know, just if you add more value than what the perceived price is, then it makes sense, you know, for most people.
Well, and that's why even in our sales training, I mean, we talk a lot about, you know, understanding where the client's ultimate goals are, right? What is the bigger picture for the client, and carving yourself out as a small pie in that, or a small piece in that entire pie,
Mm,
versus saying, like, you know, how much are you currently spending on your marketing, right? And if we could save you 20% of that, right, would that be worth it? Um, Essentially what you're doing is you've set your entire services as the pie, and then you're asking the client to justify, you know, you as a piece of that, versus saying, let's look at what we can create together, and then, you know, see if that, you know, if we can carve out a small portion of it.
awesome. And in your book, is there like one or two tips, like a sneak preview you can give us of a couple of the tips that really can transform a business?
Yeah, I mean, the I'll let you know, the book is full of
Whole book,
nuggets.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
I
I
figured
mean,
that, but
yeah. So I mean, you know, our flagship program is called KO Sales U, right? And it's
okay.
it's the only subscription-based sales training that's available out there. So for somebody who only needs, like, you know, a couple of tips and tricks, you know, for certain things, like, I need to get better at proposals, I need to get better at emails, I need to get better at creating value in the sales conversation, they could literally join us for a month and then quit right after that. But for someone else who wants to really get entrenched in it, right, you know, get to the point where they're taking master classes, they're taking the advanced level, they could join us for, you know, a longer period of time. And, you know, and this is for individuals as well as teams. So when I created the Sell More Faster book, right, essentially what I did was I said, okay, if somebody literally could not attend, you know, these classes, right, could I, you know, condense the entire class, the entire, you know, program into a book that they could digest in 4 hours? And that's essentially what I did. So, I mean, we cover everything from, you know, just looking at, you know, how are you lead qualifying your accounts, right? How are you, like, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of, you know, small business owners just don't do. Their lead qualification process typically is like, okay, as long as the person has a heartbeat and a credit card that works, they're ideal for me, right? Like, that's my lead qualification. And the unfortunate reality is, if that's your barrier, right, you end up getting a lot of the winner's curse, right? You end up winning the business, but then you curse yourself every single day, that because you have to now deal with this high maintenance client, a client that doesn't understand where the scope of work should be. You know, you're not clear on the expectations. So we talk a lot about the lead qualification process. Now, the other thing that I am a big proponent of is transparency throughout the sales process. And when I came from corporate sales, I mean, we did everything from, and this is still like, this is what it surprises me, still to this day, a lot of sales training will very much focus on, like, don't talk about price. Don't talk about price until you get to the proposal, right? You know, just avoid the conversation. And I hate this, because the reason, like, I mean, we're now seeing 6 and 10 clients that want to talk about price very early on in the conversation, typically even as early as the first meeting.
Yep.
And then the other thing that we typically see is after that point in time is like when you get to the proposal and you're showing somebody the price for the very first time and you're trying to close them on that, of course they're not going to say yes, right? Of course they're going to have to take a moment to think about this. And they teach us this in old school sales school, that like you're like, okay, well, now I've shown you the price, I've shown you all this crazy value, here's what the price is. And the client is supposed to react like it is the most amazing magic trick that they have ever seen. I'm like, whoa, like this is amazing. And I'm going to fall back in my chair with like astounding, like, you know, disbelief. And I'm going to sign on the dotted line. Nobody has ever signed that way. And so throughout the entire book, we talk a lot about like being open, being honest, like owning that premium price with a badge of honor. Because if somebody is going to disqualify themselves, I would rather you disqualify yourself in meeting 1, not in meeting 8, and then say that is so far out of our budget. Like we have no ability. I would rather make somebody slightly uncomfortable earlier on and allow the relationship to build that comfort level to the point where when we get to that final price, they already have an expectation of what it is. They get to that final price and they're like, oh, okay, it's a little bit more than I wanted to spend, but listen, like I get it. Like, you know, throughout this entire process, I get why you're so much more. And that for me is worth it.
Absolutely. I know when people like on LinkedIn, a lot of times they'll approach me and they'll say, hey, we got this new software that you're just going to love. And like, and if it sounds interesting, occasionally, you know, once in a while it piques my, like they say it does this thing and I'm like, okay, that sounds good. But then I go, so my first question is, what's this cost? And they're like, oh, it's only $75,000 a week, you know, or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, well, that's not my budget. You know, cut it by 85,000, you know.
Yeah.
Just
Try
kidding.
paying me, right? And that's another good point, right? Is that, you know, oftentimes a lot of people in their pitch, right, will say like, listen, can I get it? Can I show you a demo? Can I show you a demo? Can I show you a demo? And this is like, I mean, from a buyer's perspective, this is one of the worst things that you could possibly do, because essentially you haven't created enough value. You don't understand what the issues are in my company. And despite how amazing and pretty your product is, if I am in no position to change or enhance myself, it doesn't matter how great the demo is. It's like a car dealer saying, hey, take a test drive of this vehicle. Just take a test drive of this vehicle. Great. I'm happy to take a test drive. But if I'm in no position to actually buy a car, what's the point of a test drive? And when people jump to the demo too soon in the sales process, like essentially you have nowhere to go, right? This is there's a show, How I Met Your Mother, right? And they did this iconic episode called The Naked Man, and the naked man essentially had like this like date, and he's like, the date's not really, I'm not really sure where it's going to go. I don't know if I'm going to get a second date, so I'm just going to pull a naked man, and 1 in 3 will say yes, right? And essentially in the demo, you're going to see the same thing, right? You're going to like, you maybe have like a little bit of a meeting with the person. You're like, great, let's get to the demo. And only 1 in 3 at that demo stage continue on, because they're like, well, now you've shown me everything. I don't have anywhere to go. And like your demo should be like your closing tool, not a, you know, hey, let me show you the goodies and you determine whether this is actually something that you're interested in like pursuing or not.
Wow. Yeah, that's that's good. Yeah. So, back to this link. So I get a lot of, you know, I'm really active on LinkedIn as well. I know you are as well. And, you know, you just constantly getting all these messages and all these sales pitches just constantly, which is kind of irritating sometimes. But do you, for your sales process, is there like 1 or 2 methods that really can help you get to the right decision maker without, you know, alienating people before you even talk to them?
Well, okay, yes, yeah, always. So I mean, like, and you've heard it before, right? Like, I mean, always start at the decision maker as often as you can. But here's the other thing: is that if you are able to get to the decision maker and they push you down, right? I mean, include your invitation to come back. Thank you so much. I'm happy to meet with Megan. After we've had a great conversation, can we loop you in if this is something that you're interested in? Almost every single person is going to say yes because they're just trying to be nice. They're like, yeah, like that's fine, right? But like now you've actually given yourself the invitation of the right. Now, the other thing about, if you're ever pushed down, right? Remember that at a decision maker level, they are not talking about operations. They're not talking about making things better at this level. They're thinking strategy and vision. They're
Mm.
thinking of the 3-year and the 5-year plan. And oftentimes when salespeople go in, they'll end up talking because they're talking to, let's say, the operations manager, right? Maybe the director of something, right? Somebody in this kind of mid-management tier. I'm talking to you because you're at that tier. Whereas when you start to change the game and start asking questions that are above my pay grade, right? I am now forced to go ahead and say, well, I don't have the answers to those questions. Who does?
Mm.
Right? We know who has the answers to that question. That's the person that is above me. And it's not that we're wanting to ask those questions because it doesn't make sense. It has to make sense to the grand scheme of things. But the one thing that premium value providers get is that they're not in it for the short transaction.
Mm.
They're not in it for just the immediate sale.
Yep.
They're in it for the long-term relationship. They're in there for the 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And so I want to talk to you today about what that 3-year, 5-year, 10-year vision looks like to make sure that we're under an understanding that can we grow together? Can we help you develop and get you closer to those ultimate goals? And when I ask you at an operations level who only really has, vision into maybe 6 months, a year, maybe max 3 years, right? Anything beyond that, they can't answer. And so they're forced to kind of bring that next person in. And now we're having a bigger conversation.
Okay. Do you recommend starting with that person then, or do you recommend going to the decision maker and then getting knocked down and then building back up to the decision maker?
All roads lead to Rome, right? At the end of the
Okay.
day,
Yep. Yep.
and I mean, you're going to do what you need to do to get into the conversation. I will always start at the top, right? Because I mean, if you get at the top, that's fantastic. But I'm not going to continue to knock the door of the person at the top if they're not answering,
Mm.
right? There's, I mean, this is an old school thing, but it's called like go high, wide, and deep, right? You start off with high, you can't get high, you go wide across that thing. And if you can't, then you start to go deep and you start to go down into some of the other conversations. You try where you need to go. Now what if this client that you have selectively picked out, right? And you've seen a lot of people write this, they say, make a list. Who's that 100 clients that you're going after, right? Who are those 50 clients that you're going after? And create a strategy for them for the next 6 months and a year, right? They now have given this a call of like account-based marketing. But 10 years ago, this was just called sales, right? Like this is like, you're a salesperson, this is your job, right? And now they talk about like account-based marketing and having this strategy behind it. And so, the idea behind this is like, I mean, create a plan, right? Try different methods of communication, try different mediums of communication, try different messages, right? And you try different things because the reality is if I had a single message that worked to get 100% of the meetings for 100% of the people that you approached it with, honestly, I wouldn't be sitting in my basement in Calgary. I would be in Barbados living off a 300-foot yacht because I would be a billionaire, right? Like, I would have this silver bullet that could essentially create all of conversations at all time. But people are people. And right from the very beginning of the conversation all the way to the very end, especially when we start to get into like, how do you communicate return on investment? I am unique, I am different, and I am individual. And the conversation you want to have with me at the very beginning should be the exact same unique, individual, different conversation that you're having with me throughout the entire process. And nor should it be the same exact same conversation that you're having with everybody else. There's ways to speed it up, but you need to be present and in the moment and be willing to be fluid throughout every conversation.
Yeah. On LinkedIn, one of the things I like to do is is kind of do like a multi-target. So I'll connect with like 15, 20 people in an organization, and then basically try to start a conversation with them, not sales, but just to build kind of a little bit of relationship. And then I go up to the CEO and try to, make this go there. But I find that a lot of times they go and they look at you and they see who your mutuals are. And then they go within the company and say, hey, I see you're a mutual friend with this Jess Tiffany guy. Who's he?
Yeah.
And so I like to kind of have like a couple ins where he has a few people he can, that are kind of close to his level that he can go back and go, oh yeah, he's that guy. He's kind of big on LinkedIn or whatever,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I play with it a little bit. Seems to work sometimes. So I'm sure there's better methods, but that's kind of what I've played with there. So, so I saw you on your LinkedIn profile, you met Oprah. I thought that was
Yes.
cool. How did that happen? You just got to hang out or what? She just called you one day and.
Oh my goodness. You know what? If Oprah had my phone number, I think I would probably like die like right here in my chair. You know what? I had a window of opportunity to meet her. And, there's one thing I know is like never hesitate. No matter what the investment, the cost, the time it takes, and I grew up with Oprah, right? Oprah was my hero. And I said for the rest of my life, I'm like, you know what, one day I'm going to be on the Oprah Winfrey Show, right? And now the Oprah Winfrey Show doesn't exist in its current form anymore. But there was, she was where I was, right? And I just said, like, I reached out, made some phone call, whatever it was. I can't even remember exactly the whole thing. And it was like, I'm going to meet Oprah, right? Like I'm going to meet Oprah. And so the opportunity of meeting Oprah, in this case, actually, right? I wish I had like a better story about how she interviewed me and everything else of this. And we're cross on woods and we're putting it on the vision board because maybe one day it will happen. Is that, when you meet Oprah, you only get a few seconds with her. Right? Like that's it, right? You're brought in, you get your, you get to have your picture and then you're out. And so for a couple months, I knew that I was going to meet Oprah, right? When she was going to be in town. And I was like, okay, like this is awesome. And I stressed and I figured when you meet Oprah, what is like the one question that you want to ask her? Because I figured, right, that like if I only got a few seconds with her, right, I had just enough time. If I practice it really well, I could ask her one question and that was it. Right. And so I knew it had to be fast. It had to be impactful. Probably had to be 5 words or less because that was the only thing like I had mental capacity for to remember. And I practice this, like you had no idea. Like I practice a lot of my sales meetings. I do a lot of role play and everything. But specifically around Oprah, I knew that I was probably going, like if I stumbled and fell, I knew I want to at least get that out. And so, I go and I meet her and she smells like roses and beautiful things. And I'm just like, oh, and the only question I could get out of her right in that moment was like, what do you need right now? And that was like the only thing I could get because in my head, I was thinking, I don't care if Oprah needed a box of Skittles. I am going to find a box of Skittles and I'm going to bring it to Oprah, right? And I'm going to be the person that like brought something to Oprah because I figured that everybody like is asking Oprah for something. Sure. What if I like, change it around and ask her to do something? In hindsight, I wish I would have asked her a better question, right? I wish I would have asked her something like, what was the best piece of advice you were ever given? But at the time that was the only thing I could come up with. So if anybody ever gets a chance to meet Oprah, the question I would ask her is, what is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
All right. And did she want Skittles or something else?
No, she said, you know what she ended up saying was, she's like, I don't need anything. She's like, but thank you so much for the question. It was, really great. And I was like, my heart was like, and I started to cry.
Wow. Yeah. Not quite as big a famous person, but Jeffrey Hazlett, 4-time New York Times bestselling author guy. He lives in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is about a 4-hour drive from Minneapolis, where I'm at. And he invited me for a whiskey tasting event. I don't really drink, but I drove to South Dakota so I could hang out with him for 3-4 hours, whatever it was. Lovely. And that was a pretty cool experience, getting to hang out with somebody pretty cool. But anyway, back to things here. So I was kind of curious. So you got the decision maker and you kind of got, talked to him, and then do you have any tips on getting to the close? Like, is there any things that, once you've kind of done your pitch, is there any like one or two tips that can help you, improve your conversion rates?
Well, I mean, yeah, like, yeah, I mean, when do you start to close, right? You
Buy your
start
book.
from the you very, yeah, you start from the very first meeting, right? But
Yeah.
assuming that you have, you have, created crazy amounts of value, you understand the clients, like, goals and aspirations, the consequences of them staying in the current state, where do they want to be? How are they going to measure the success of this investment, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
we've clarified all of that. Um, when you get to the proposal, right? I mean, first things first is like, don't be proposing if you think that you have a less than 80% chance of closing the deal.
Mm,
Right? Do a quick gut check with yourself and be like, do I truly feel this client is ready to say yes right now? Right? Put yourself in that person's shoes. If you don't feel the person is ready to say yes, or I met with one client, actually there's two client stories, but one of them said, well, we probably close like 50% of the proposals that we put out. And I'm like, so you're willing to put out, a proposal when you feel like your odds are a coin flip right now? Like, that's, you should really take a look at that. I had another client that said for every close that they get, they probably do 3 proposals. And I'm like, so if you need, let's say 4 closes in a month, I said, you're telling your team to get to like, will you marry me 12 times? I'm like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, it's a lot of energy to get to the proposal stage.
yeah.
And if you're getting there and you feel like your chances of closing that is a coin flip or less, then chances are you're just not ready, right? Slow it down. Now, what I sometimes hear from people is like, well, the client is ready to buy, like they're going to buy, right? And it's like, okay, well, then if they're choosing to buy, but you don't feel like they're ready to buy from you, then you have one of 2 options, right? Let them go down that path. Like that's it, right? They're going to buy. They're not even choosing you anyway, because you've already determined that the chances of them closing with you is like less than what you think it is.
Mhm.
But the other thing is like, well, by slowing it down, doesn't that help your case? Right? Like, if you tell them that you're not quite ready to propose because you still need to find out more information, that you still are not clear about their goals or how they're going to measure the success of this project, how will you know that this was a successful investment for us? Right? How are you going to measure, what we've achieved in this period of time? If you can't answer those questions, it doesn't matter how amazing your proposal is, because if you can't answer that, how is the client supposed to answer that? And I can guarantee you they have not had that conversation amongst themselves, right? That, oh, the only person that asks that question is the one that prompts them to think it and be like, oh, good. How should we measure the success of this? How will we know we received the result? Like, what is the result we're looking for? And in the absence of getting, let's say, to, a certain revenue dollar, how will we know we're on the right path?
Mm,
Right? Like, at what point do we, like, say, you know what, we're going to cut our losses? Like, these are conversations that need to be have before the close, not after. That's like getting married to somebody and be like, oh baby, like, by the way, we haven't even discussed like if we want to have kids or where we want to move or whose career like we should like, and you're like, holy, those are things you should have a conversation before you get married, right?
right.
Not after.
Oh my, yes. So, and I totally agree, with what you're saying. One piece of my organization, we do digital marketing, as an agency as well. So how do you get past, a lot of times we have to give like custom quotes. So you kind of build all this value, and then and then all of a sudden you have to give them sticker shock, at the end, because, but you can't really tell them what it's going to do for them other than it's going to improve their business. Like if we're going to redesign a website, we're going to say you're going to increase your ROI, and we're going to, all this stuff. But then all of a sudden we're like, it's, $25,000 for this website or whatever it is, or 10,000 or, whatever the price is. But I'm just kind of curious, how do you, I don't know how to ask my question, but basically I get stuck sometimes where I usually like try to be upfront with what prices are, so they have an expectation. But then when they explain what they need and all this customization, all of a sudden now it's an extra 10 grand because what they want. So how do you kind of justify that to them, or, when they kind of go in thinking it's going to be $5,000 and then it's 25,000 or something like that, because they want these little nuances and stuff like that. I'm just
Okay.
curious if you have I know it's kind of a long question,
Yeah,
but.
yeah. Okay, I mean, yeah, and there's a few pieces in there, right? So number one, right, you should like if you have set your client's expectations for it to be
Mhm.
$5,000,
Right.
of course your client is going to walk in there expecting it to be $5,000.
Right.
So as a service provider, you have not done your job to
Mm.
help set their expectations, right? This is called anchoring, right? And what you ultimately want, if you don't know, like, so if, let's say you're at the very beginning stages of a conversation,
Yeah.
and the client's like, well, how much is this going to cost? And you're like, listen, like, honestly, I don't even know, because like, as we're going to go through this, like, we're going to figure out some customizations and everything. But
Mm.
I'm going to tell you what, right? The most expensive project that we ever put out was like a $50,000 project.
Mm.
Now, based on what we're talking about, right, I definitely don't think that it's going to be a $50,000 project. We could be as low as 5,000, but that's going to be a bare bones. We're going to land somewhere in the middle, and I don't know where that is.
Gotcha.
Now, so what did I do, right? What I ended up doing was I gave them the biggest shocking thing first. I don't have $50,000. Like, there's no way I can spend that. And then you help to bring me down, right? By saying, but it could be as low as 5,000. We're
Gotcha.
going to land somewhere in there, right? So now I know that my range isn't, and the difference is that it's a subtle difference, but it's so important, is that I don't say, well, we start from $5,000 and we can go all the way up to about 50, because people hear what they hear first,
Right.
right? And so when I hear $50,000 first, I'm like, I'm reacting to that right away. And then when you bring me down to 5,000, I'm like, okay, you've calmed me down. Whereas when you say, I'm going to start you at 5,000 and bring you up, I'm like, well, then that's me. Like, I'm the starting price, right? Like, and I don't even hear the second portion
Sure.
of this conversation. Now, as we go forward, right, and we're trying to get to that return on investment and everything, it is not up to you to tell your client what their return on investment is. Okay, so right from the very beginning, right, how we connect with people through email, direct messaging, phone calls, and everything, like, the message needs to resonate. So because I am already an individual, unique, different business, the results that I want to have from a new website, from a marketing campaign, from whatever it is probably also going to be unique and different, and completely individual to my business. How are we going to measure this? Now the other thing, so let's assume we're doing a marketing campaign. We're going to get you more website hits, right? A brand new website is going to give you a ton of SEO, right? You're going to blog post a bunch of stuff, but it's going to help drive more traffic. Oh, that's awesome. What am I doing? Why do I want more traffic? What is that going to do for me? Right? And so these are part of the questions you need to ask in part of the sales cycle, right? Well, what does more traffic mean to you? Right? How are you going to convert it? Because at the end of the day, as soon as the person has gone ahead and clicked the contact us button, your job is done, right? You have done your job. But then the client gets really upset after the project is finished, because they're like, Jess, we have all these people that are contacting us, but they're not even qualified, right? We're not able to close them. We're not able, blah, 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 blah. My job. That's like, I mean, and we need to be really clear on this. Like, imagine if Delta Airlines goes ahead and tries to sell you a vacation package, and they're like, listen, we're going to take you to a beach, right? We're going to take you to a beach. It's going to be amazing, like, fantastic. And you're like, awesome, right? And so you get on in this plane, because you're thinking like, oh my goodness, like, we're going to go down to the Florida Keys. It's going to be beautiful. But where do they send you to? They send you to, like, Venice Beach, or they send you maybe to Seattle. Seattle has a beach, right? It's all rocks and it's cold, but it's a beach, right? And and so they promised you what they were going to do for an expectation, what the result was going to be once you got there. And
Mm.
so we need to be asking these questions throughout the process. This is going to ultimately, people are going to be scared to do this, because they're like, oh, it's going to slow down my sales process, or I'm going to make them think of different things. No, if anything, they're going to value you. They're going to know why you're worth more. And ultimately, it's going to create more successful clients in the long run, helping you increase your referrals, your testimonials, and, create bigger opportunities for upsells and cross sells later on.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just admitted to the, thousands of people that sometimes well, like on my standardized pricing, it's easy because, you just say the price and you're done, and you can give them an idea. But I think on some of the big projects, sometimes I go, well, it's usually about $5,000 for most people, and so that's why, so a couple
And
times.
then, and then of course, Of course they don't want to, and then they shop around, right? Because now they're like, well, he said it was 5,000. He's showing me a price that's like 2 times that amount. Like, I'm not really sure. And you completely discounted all the value you may have created because they've been going in with this expectation, and then it doesn't happen the way they expect, right? What is happiness? Happiness is that my reality meets my expectations.
Yeah.
And when I have my expectations set for me by a service value provider, and my reality comes and it is far different than my expectations, I am now an unhappy person. Therefore, I have to go and I have to shop around. Whereas when you go ahead and you set someone's expectations down here, right, wherever it is, and you exceed them, now I'm really happy. Right. When we present pricing to our clients, we have 2 tiers of pricing, right? We have our business solutions, right? And then we have our small business solutions, we call them, right? And in our business solutions, I mean, we have pricing that goes up to like $30,000 a month, right? You can work with us, right? We will train your team. We're going to do some rahs. We're going to have like we're actually going to help you even recruit qualified salespeople. On our small business solutions, even if I'm talking to a single person, I always promote my price as saying like, listen, on the top end of our small business solutions, we have a price that is $2,900 a month, which allows you and 11 of your employees to join the program. Even if I'm talking to employee 1, right? Like I'm the solopreneur. Why do I do that? Right? Because number one, I have to give them sticker shock. Right? I have to let them know like this is, and they immediately said, this is not for you. This is overkill for you. But when you're there, I want you to know that we have a solution to meet your needs. And I'm like, oh, good. Kim can grow with us, right? Where you should be, right, is probably solution number 2, right, which is you and an employee. And I know it's just you, but for $500 a month, as long as you're a constant subscriber, you could split that cost with another entrepreneur. You could hire somebody. You could, like, if that person changes, you can bring somebody else in all the time, right? But you're constantly getting it. And then on our lowest end, we have $50 a month for the self-study program. And for most people, I'm not a self-study person myself, right? That's not something I would go for, but we wanted to provide that option because there are lots of people that are. And so what did I do, right? Instead of saying, hey, we start at $50 a month, you're like, awesome, that's me, I'm $50 a month. And then we go to 500. Oh, I'm going to try the $50 a month and I'm going to see if that works for me, which it won't, right? Because I'm not a self-study person. I'm going to see if that works for me. And if it doesn't, then, I know where I can go. But what's going to end up happening when they're not a self-study person and they try the $50 a month program, they're unhappy. Right. And then they go somewhere else.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah. And luckily I don't do a ton of custom quotes, but I guess I have noticed that I've done that in the past. So thank you for helping me.
They should all be custom, Jess. They should all be custom. You're providing exceptional value for somebody. Yeah, there's massive money in customization.
Yeah. No, I agree. You're absolutely right. So now you got me flustered. But so as far as like, what's the number one, like for your company, what's the number one like revenue generation method? Is it like going through, or like sales method, like going through, like calling people, LinkedIn or Facebook ads, or what's your kind of your number one breadwinner?
So for our business personally?
Yeah, I was curious what method works best for your company specifically.
Webinars, okay. Right? Like, creating relationships with people and just teaching, right? Like if I get an opportunity to teach somebody and they say, holy crap, I got so much value in that 60 minutes, that 90 minutes. I can only imagine like what a program, like what they're going to go through in the program. Like that's what I do. Now I give the very best, right? I do not believe with the idea that I'm going to give you just a little bit, right? And then you're going to be so hungry that you're going to want the rest. I'm like, no, here's what it is, right? And I'm going to give you the very best. And if that's what you need, good, right? Our mission at KO Advantage Group is to teach 1 million people sales skills. Wow. Now, I want to be clear here because that does not necessarily mean that I need to have 1 million subscribers by 2030. What that means is that I want to have 1 million people who could say, I am a student of Kim Orlesky. I am a student of KO Advantage Group. I never got the chance to see Zig Ziglar speak when he was alive. right? I never got an opportunity to like, join one of his classes. Now, I mean, you can go to the Ziegler Institute or whatever they call it now. Um, but I consider myself to be a student of his teaching because he taught such great material every single time. That is our goal, right? And that's why, whether it's the book and, whether you want to download, sell more faster for free, just because you need to digest the content, you prefer to read a book and you're going to contact a small business owner and order a specialty, or you're just going to attend a webinar from us, or maybe join one of our programs. We want to give you the relationship that you can both put yourself in, invest worth the time as well as financial, so that no matter what, you're getting the very best, right? The difference is like, are you going to do it yourself? Which you can do it yourself if you want to. I can learn how to cook through online recipes. I could take a cooking class and I could learn to cook even faster and better. And like, and with somebody with detail, it's going to give you feedback. And we're the same thing, right? Here's a bunch of free recipes that you can download, right? Here's a whole bunch of resources. Here's a whole bunch of great webinars, like all sorts of different things. But listen, if you want to get results faster, better, more efficiently, if you are determined that this year is the year that you are going to hit whatever that goal is, whether it's a 6-digit goal, a 7-digit goal, an 8-digit goal, work with us. Right, we have a team in place that has been there and done that, and we can work with you. Right, I am probably one of the few sales trainer companies out there that has like literally said that. I mean, we have worked, like I have personally started and closed like 40-some million dollar projects. Yeah, I was working for American Express at the time, but because I've been in that, I know what it looks like to be in that.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you want that type of experience level, come and see us. Right. And we're happy to help. But we've also worked with, we do a lot of smaller transactions too. And we know what that game looks like too.
Awesome. Can they find your webinars on your website?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can find all of our webinars. Follow us. If you're on LinkedIn, go to the KO Advantage page on LinkedIn. We're posting all of our webinars on the events section of that page, as well as if you go to kimorlesky.com/events, you'll see all of our webinars, as well as the ones that we co-host with other companies, such as Zoom, Inc. Magazine, HubSpot, and a whole bunch of other associations as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I did actually get to see Zig speak one time, so I was happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you came to Minneapolis, I don't know, 5-10 years. I don't know how many years ago it was. Maybe it's 15 years ago now. I lose track of time.
Yeah.
I say the other day and tell a story, and my wife's like, the other day was like 15 years ago. And I'm like, oh, whoops, So.
I know. I feel the same way. I'm like, I watch my son. My son is now, he's like 3.5, right? And I said, like, I said, I don't know how he keeps getting bigger and growing because I haven't aged a day.
Oh, perfect. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I don't know if anybody else got something out of it, but I got a ton out of it, so I appreciate it. I'm not going to be making that one mistake about setting low expectations right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't do a lot, but occasionally I catch myself doing that, not realizing it.
It's a skill. It's a skill that needs practice, right? And I think that's part of it. I mean, earlier you talked about like, how do you get past like, presenting yourself as a number? You have to practice it. And that's why even in our own program, I mean, we do a lot of role play, right? It's like practice these phone calls, practice these conversations that you're, practice a negotiation, practice just saying your price, because it sounds a lot different in your head than the first time it comes out. And the moment you stumble over that word, right, you create hesitancy and doubt in the client. So you want to be clean and crisp with it every single time.
Yeah. It's funny, before I started my own business, I sell other people's products. And I could sell those all day long because I didn't have the hesitancy, because I knew the product worked, and I had the confidence to just, I just say, boom, this is what it is. This, and I think, and then when you start getting into your own products and services, sometimes you kind of get in your own head and you're like, oh, you kind of have that, like I said, the hesitancy in your voice, and it comes across. So I have experienced that. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. So you told them, I guess, already where to find you: LinkedIn and your website.
Yes.
Could you spell the website for people that are maybe?
Yeah. So Kim Orlesky is KIMORLESKY.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening to the podcast today. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you again soon.